My sister's new boyfriend tried to make me look weak at the dinner table. Everyone was laughing. My father said, "Be quiet, think about the family's honor." I didn't argue. I waited. The moment he mentioned his job, I took out my phone. And the truth silenced everyone. My sister's new boyfriend tried to make me look weak at the dinner table. Everyone was laughing, as if my life were part of some joke. I sat with my eyes fixed on my plate, but every sentence sank into my chest like a nail. He took a sip of water, looked at me, and said, "So you still do the same thing? Waitressing." As if my job decided my worth. Mom placed the roast beef on the table and quietly lowered her eyes. Dad said the same line he always says, "Be quiet, think about the family's honor." I didn't argue. I waited. Because I knew, the time was coming. Mark, this so-called guide to my sister's dreams, was always one of a type when it came to people like me. The kind who believed the world existed to carry them, just because they wore expensive cologne and spoke with confidence. Men who marketed their success the way a store displays products in a glass case, shiny and carefully lit. And my sister Jessica, she had always been drawn to men like that. She believed Mark would pull her out of the life she hated, the small house, the 15-year-old couch, and a crowded world where nothing ever came easily. But I knew who Mark really was. Not because I was clever or special, but because I paid attention. I stayed quiet, yes, but quiet doesn't mean blind. Silence has a way of sharpening observation. The noise at the dinner table kept rising. Mark joked about my hours, about how late I worked, about how tired I must always be. Then he leaned back and said, "A woman your age still surviving on tips? That must be rough. Maybe you didn't make the best choices." People tried to laugh. That forced kind of laughter, the kind that exists only to cover the sound of something cracking inside. Jessica laughed too, lightly, and touched his arm, but I caught the shadow in her eyes. She wasn't fully convinced by him anymore, not really. My life had stretched thin like old chewing gum. I rotated shifts, paid bills, survived a failed marriage, and never complained, not even when my hopes turned into trash I had to step around every morning. I was tired. Not just in my body, but deep in my heart. Mark mistook that exhaustion for weakness. He was wrong. I was quiet, and quiet people sometimes carry the most dangerous truths. When he mentioned his job, it felt like the meal itself paused. "I work at a big mortgage company," he said proudly. "High position." As if it were carved into his soul. As if it were armor. I pulled out my phone. Every eye turned toward me. "Now?" Mom asked, surprised. I didn't answer. I opened the search bar and brought up the thing that had been burning inside me like electricity for over a month. The company's name. And beneath it, the headline published 3 days earlier. Jessica leaned forward. "What is that?" I placed the phone in the center of the table. The light washed over Mark's face, and in seconds, he went pale. Mortgage fraud ring exposed. Key employee under investigation. The sound of Mom's cup hitting the floor echoed through the dining room. This is nothing." Mark stammered. "Some misunderstanding inside the company." For the first time, I looked him directly in the eyes when I spoke. "The files they found in your apartment, were those a misunderstanding too?" Jessica's breath caught. "Mark, are you involved in this?" He stood up abruptly, shoving the chair back. "I'm leaving. I don't need this." "Yeah," I said quietly. "The police might not need you much longer either." He walked toward the door, but for the first time, my sister didn't follow him. She stayed frozen in her seat, as if she were seeing me for the first time, really seeing me. Seeing the years of pain that had always been ignored. Mom looked at me, opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Dad finally said softly, We didn't know what you'd been carrying all this time." I laughed inside, a sad, tired laugh. Because this wasn't new. I had always carried things. Other people's words. Family expectations. Rent payments. Medical bills. And that loneliness that settles over a city like the final bell of the night, silencing everything. I didn't blame them. I never had. But for the first time, I allowed myself to be heard. "You never asked how I was," I said quietly. "You just kept noticing what I failed to become." Jessica stared straight ahead, empty-eyed. Then she whispered, I thought you were just jealous. But you were trying to protect me, weren't you? I nodded slowly. Always. You're my sister. Mom tried to hide her tears, but her voice broke. Please forgive us, sweetheart. I had been holding on to the idea of forgiveness for years. Forgiveness can bandage wounds, but it doesn't erase the scars. Still, for the first time, it felt like maybe this house wasn't as hostile as I had always believed. I put on my jacket and walked toward the door. The cool evening air touched my face and felt, for once, like a real breath. As I opened the door, without looking back, I said, I wasn't weak. You just mistook my silence for weakness. And that night, for the first time, I stood firmly on my own feet.